When every door closes, where is God? How does he speak when the nights are loud with questions and the world answers only with silence? Have you ever laid out plans by the light of a small lamp, traced a route in the dust with your finger, and watched every way you intended to go fold inward like pages of a closed book? That is where this story begins, with a young man named Eli, a head full of maps and a heart full of a single stubborn dream. Eli lived on the edge of a village that had learned to measure hope in small things: a harvested field, a roof that did not leak, a neighbor who stopped by with bread. From boyhood he had kept a different kind of measuring: miles, not months. He wanted to leave, to learn a trade in the city, to send back more than stories and spare coins. On the night he prepared to go, he sat by the lamp and folded his plans into a neat bundle. The light carved the blue lines of his map and made the dust in the air look like a slow, patient snowfall. He wrapped what he would carry, kissed his father's brow, and stepped toward the first open road. The first door closed with the sudden roar of a river. A bridge he had used as a child to cross the stream lay shattered, its planks split like old teeth. Water, brown, relentless, rushed where the road had been. Eli stood a long time on the bank, feeling the noise press against his ears, his boots rooted to the earth. He tried to find another crossing. He prayed, quietly without flourish, and waited until dusk pulled a dark shawl over the hills. He returned home, pockets emptier than when he left. He thought that perhaps the second door would swing wide for him. But the next week his father stumbled on the yard's uneven stone and did not rise. A fall that broke more than a bone shattered the easy certainty that a son could leave. The choice pressed on Eli like winter: go and risk abandoning his father, or stay and carry him through a slow season. He stayed. Nights lengthened into a vigilance of quiet tasks: fetching water, cleaning bandages, mending the roof so the rain would not find them weak. The map stayed in his trunk. The lamp kept burning for details no longer needed. Then the donkey, the faithful animal that had carried grain and message for years, grew sick and thin. The neighbor's advice, the herb brewed, even Eli's clumsy hands could not coax the old beast back. The string in his chest, already frayed more. By then the village had become a series of small doors closing, the bridge gone, travel postponed, plans on hold. In the heat of a late afternoon, driven by a tiredness that had nothing to do with sleep, Eli walked into the field to be alone with the long grass and the sky. He could hear his own breath. He could feel the aching absence of the life he had imagined. He almost gave up. He almost said the words that people say when they have grown small inside: "This is it. The way is closed." He bent over a patch of wild soil and stared at his hands. It was there, among the furrows and dry blades of grass, that he met Dara. Dara worked the field with patience stitched into the seams of her sleeves. She seemed ordinary until you noticed how things around her listened, how the soil looked more attentive where her shadow fell, how a broken fence got mended without anyone's notice. When Eli flung himself onto a clump of earth and let his anger or sorrow spill out in half-formed sentences, she only nodded as if she had been waiting for years to hear such words. She did not scold the young man or soothe him with promises. She listened. After a few quiet moments, she took from the pocket of her apron 2 small seeds and pressed them into Eli's palm. They were unremarkable, no larger than the end of a thumb, brown and plain. "Plant one on the hard path," she said, "and plant the other by the stream. Come back in time." Her voice was not loud, and yet something about the instruction felt like a door opening, soft as a reed's hinge. It was a strange task, and Eli wanted explanation. She offered none in long speech, only one sentence that sounded like an old rule learned from the land itself. Not every place is ready for every seed. Then she worked her way back to her tasks, and Eli, with a stubbornness not yet tempered into wisdom, obeyed. He planted one seed where the path was cracked, where travelers' feet had ground the soil into a thin, dusty crust. He planted the other beside a narrow bend of water, where the stream kept a thin, steady hum and the earth was cool and dark. Then life resumed its ordinary demands: his father's slow healing, the care of the animals, the small trades that kept hunger at bay. Eli thought of the seeds now and then. Sometimes he checked on them. Sometimes he forgot for many days. It was the kind of waiting that feels like the dull ache of a tooth you cannot reach. Days passed, then weeks. When he returned to the hard path, his heart tightened like a fist. There was only dust and the faint imprint of his planting. No green, no movement. He knelt by the stream, and there, where the water breathed on the bank, a thin green had broken the gray. Tender, bewildered life pushing up as if to say, "Here I am." He sat there for a long time, watching the small stem, and a shift began inside him. The anger that had been a hot, burning thing cooled and settled into something quieter. He remembered Dara's sentence, "Not every place is ready for every seed." He thought of the bridge, the fall, the donkey, the map folded under his trunk. He thought of the lamp, the nights, the hands that tended him and his father. What if those closed doors had not been punishment or failure, but a kind of redirection? What if the silence he had felt was not the absence of God, but the space in which God was speaking in a small voice, not with trumpet or flame, but with the slow work of preparing soil? Eli chose then to tend, not to rage. He found himself returning to the sprout beside the stream with a new intention. He cleared the weeds that threatened it, drew a little channel to lead more water its way during a dry spell, set a small stone as a marker so the village children would not trample it in their games. He spent the spare minutes he could spare in simple stewardship, carrying water, smoothing the soil, sometimes just sitting in the shade it offered and listening. Where once his dream had been an outward journey he would someday take, now his dreams rearranged. They opened inward. He began to think of hospitality, of a place where a weary traveler could find shade, a cup of water, a quiet bench to rest. He planted more than seeds. He planted readiness. Seasons moved. The sprout drew itself upward and widened into a sapling, then into a young tree with branches that spread like hands ready to hold. It bore no sudden miracles, no overnight miracles that change headlines, but it grew in the ordinary, faithful way trees do when roots are deep and care is patient. The ground around it held moisture in summer. Birds nested in its limbs and sang through mornings that had once astonished Eli with their ordinariness. Eli built a small shelter beneath its shade, a place to set out jugs of water and a blanket for someone who needed a reprieve from the road. He kept the lamp by the bench for those who came at night, a little light that said in small way, "You are welcome." People began to come, not at first in caravans or with trumpets, but in single steps towards the place of rest. A shepherd stopped and repaired his boot. A woman with a heavy pack sat and cooled her hands in the water. A messenger changed his course to ask for directions and stayed for bread. One afternoon, when the road was especially dusty and the trees shimmered with heat, a caravan slowed. The leader, a man who had spent a life reading ways and judging by what he saw, paused beneath Eli's tree. He noticed the shelter and the water stored in a simple clay jar, the lamp that had been trimmed, the care in small things. He asked about the one who had made such a place. When he learned the story, the seeds, the waiting, the care, he smiled in a way that softened his weathered face. He blessed the tree and the man who tended it. "You made a road of welcome," he said, "and now the road has come to you." He left behind more than the gratitude of one passing traveler. He left a partnership that turned hospitality into steady provision. The caravan would trade through that stop, and what began as small acts of stewardship became a steady stream of supply that made daily life easier for Eli and his father. The door he had once wanted to pass through opened in an unexpected way. The road he had set out to find arrived at his door because he had planted, tended, and welcomed. If this story sounds like your life in some ways, if you have felt closed in by broken bridges and postponed plans, stay with me a moment. If this touches a place in you, if it brings a quiet hope you have almost forgotten, take a second now to tap like and subscribe so we can walk through more of these stories together. When every door closes, God often speaks not in the thunderclap we expect, but in the slow scratch of root against stone. He speaks in the readiness of soil, in the quiet hands that tend what is small, in the steady offering of shade and water. Closed doors may be redirections, not rejections. They may be the world's way of saying, not yet, and not here, while unseen counsels prepare the ground for what tomorrow might require. That does not mean every closed door is easy to bear, nor that every closed door leads to something immediately grand. It means the voice we long for can sometimes be heard as a small, persistent invitation. Care for what you can, keep the lamp trimmed, give water when you have it. There are practical ways to live into this truth. Notice the small things you already hold: a skill, a spare hour, a space in your home, a pair of hands that know how to mend. Steward them. Offer the shade of your time to someone who is struggling. Tend the small sprout, literally and metaphorically, and resist the urge to view every delay as failure. Ask, what soil might this closed door be preparing, rather than immediately concluding you have been abandoned? Look for signs. A friend's unexpected visit, a sudden need in your neighborhood, a simple nudge to sow what you have. Hospitality looks different in every life. It may be a cup of tea, an unpaid hour spent listening, a steady presence for someone who needs to be seen. If you are in a season where the map sits folded and the lamp's light feels faint, let this be a gentle invitation rather than a harsh command. Trust grows in the rhythm of small obediences. Patience is cultivated when you water what you can reach. And sometimes, when you least expect it, the road you were searching for will find its way to the place you have planted. Lord, in the quiet where words fall short, help us notice the small things you are growing. Give us the eyes to see the seed by the stream, and the hands to tend it faithfully. If you are tending a small seed right now, something tiny but steady, tell us in the comments. Share one small thing you are caring for: a habit, a relationship, a project, a prayer. And if this story encouraged you, pass it to someone who needs to hear that closed doors do not always mean you are forgotten. God often speaks in the silence. Sometimes he speaks by asking us to plant, to water, and to wait.